Hello everyone. Today I want to share some thoughts on how mathematical thinking can actually help to highly improve the way we look at problems and the way we in general think about the world. This will be very general, so I think in the future I will probably talk more about certain kinds of mathematical thinking, certain methods from mathematical thinking. Right now it's just to give a general idea how and why this is helpful. To start, I think a lot of people have somewhat of a wrong idea of mathematics because, well, in school it's just you always have to solve a problem and show some number, and of course mathematics is concerned about numbers and numbers play a role in it, but it's actually much more interesting for mathematicians and in mathematics and for many people who use mathematics that it studies structures and it studies relationships and how certain things, which often you measure in numbers, can be put together in structures and how the relationships within these structures can be described. And that is actually much more wide than what most people think about mathematics. So, for example, you have concepts like vector spaces, which basically are a way to work with structures in which there's more than one relevant thing which you can measure. And so by having rules how to look at those things, you actually have a way to characterize relationships which play a role here, and to also get a deeper understanding how to work with describing any problem where there's more than one relevant variable, which means more than one relevant factor in what you analyze. And this is something which I also want to talk about more in the future, which would be the concept of what I call multidimensional thinking, so thinking about more than one factor which influences the thing you're looking at, and how this kind of thinking can greatly enrich how you look at the world and how you analyze problems, not only in a very specific sense, so not only in a sense where you actually can put in numbers, but in a general sense. So also when you just think about something to get a rough idea what's happening, thinking very, very without much detail, it's still very interesting and very useful to be aware of such multi-dimensional processes, and actually it can also help you to have some of the basic ideas on how those relationships are described in mathematics, because it can help you to understand how this kind of relationships actually manifests in the world, because a lot of mathematics was inspired by what people observed in nature. It was then abstracted, so nowadays you can actually do at least a part of mathematics, which is called pure mathematics, basically without needing any relationship to the world. But of course historically those things always grew together. The mathematical description of the world and mathematics itself share a history, and so there have been those influences, and so a lot of mathematics is inspired by things that are observed in the world. And since mathematics studies a lot relationships, by relationships of things that you can see in the world and by the structure that things that you can observe in the world actually take. So another thing which is very interesting, like there's a whole area of mathematics which looks at how things change. Actually, many people also probably learned it in school. They learned analysis, and analysis actually is a formalization of how to study change. And it can be quite useful to understand what basic principles are used here, without needing to understand every formula, but just having an idea how do you look at those things and how do you describe them, and what can that enrich in my normal thinking. And of course there also is the area of probabilities and statistics, which is often used to describe things, which we can often see in the media. though not everyone has enough understanding of statistics to understand what it actually means, because if you just look at the number, then you usually don't get the full story, because also in this area of mathematics there's more of a structure behind it, and just being in generally aware of the structure can help you to understand better what is being described. And also I would say from this area, just the concept of probabilistic thinking is extremely useful, which means that you kind of can use it to go away from a simplified black and white thinking. The same is actually also true for the other areas of mathematics, which allow you to put in more nuance, and in the case of more dimensional mathematics, to kind of realize there's not just one thing where I have black and white. Even if I have black and white, there's probably many different dimensions which are independent where I can look at this. So just having this concept and understanding that actually in many cases it's not about two options, but it's more about nuance and options in between, and there actually is a certain uncertainty in this, which I can describe by probabilities, but which still can help me to make decisions, because I can look at probabilities, and even though they don't give me certainty, I can still use them to make decisions, to pick options which have a more likely outcome or help me move more towards the outcome that I want, but also to understand when I see things described by probabilities. And there's a whole question of how different probabilities interact with each other. So there again, it's about structures and relationships within those probabilities, which I can then use to better understand what's going on, to better describe the world, and have a more realistic estimation of what's going on. And actually what you can often see that in the media there is a presentation of some results and some probabilities which are used and things like that, but they're not quite explained in many cases. So they're also just having a basic idea how those concepts of mathematics works can for one help you to understand the things that are presented in the media, or also things presented in a scientific paper. Actually, if you don't have a certain level of knowledge about statistics, a lot of the papers which are published in the medical field and psychology, for example, you just don't understand what they mean. If you don't have an understanding of things like complex analysis, multidimensional analysis, probably a lot of the papers which are published in theoretical physics, you have no chance of understanding what they mean. So it's actually quite useful to gain an understanding of this. And I don't mean that you have to really study math in depth. You need to do this if you want to understand usages of math in depth, but what I mean is get a general idea, get enough basics of the math to understand when you read something what to look for, and beyond that try to understand some general concepts which you don't even have to understand in the real mathematical way, but just in general understand the concept that things can be influenced by more than one factor, and that this leads to something like a multidimensional thinking, and have some understanding of some of the basic concepts in there which come from mathematics, but which you can apply in a wider way. Have an understanding of that it can be useful to think in probabilities, that there's not a total certainty, and that this will influence how you make decisions about things. And hopefully I can share some more of this, so that I can help you to use some of those general concepts in your thinking, not in a rigorous mathematical way, but just as an inspiration of showing new ways to look at problems, which hopefully will help you get a fuller picture. And this will be concepts from mathematics, but also concepts from sciences which use mathematics. There's a lot of concepts which come from physics, which is probably the most mathematicized of the sciences at this point. And actually you can see that in a lot of cases people have taken concepts which were developed in physics, usually using mathematics or finding a way to put them into mathematics, and then they find that they can use those methods to describe other structures in completely different fields. There is actually fields like econophysics which kind of uses such methods, usually quite mathematical methods developed in physics, and puts it to use to try and explain things in economics. And there is a field called social physics, which does the same towards other social sciences. And there's probably many, many more applications of this. And it's very useful to have a basic understanding of how those things work, because they will not show you a complete truth, because frankly the world is just too complex to do that in a simple way. But they will help you get more viewpoints and build a wider and more informed picture of what's going on in the world. As a final field, which is also very closely related to mathematics, there is actually the whole field of computers and computer studies, computer science, because it is all built up on electronics, which use certain kind of mathematics to actually be able to calculate things, and then this has moved so far in the way it has been optimized and thought through by very smart people that now you can watch a video of me being beamed through the whole world just based on this kind of simple mathematics, upon which then layer upon layer is built and allows a completely new way of complex things, and then also has now opened up way to new kinds of using mathematics, which is basically the whole field of data science. It uses mathematical concepts which it can realize using the power of modern computers to do things we couldn't do before. But it helps if you have a general understanding of what's going on there, what mathematical concepts are used there, and also what is the limits of this, because there's always a risk of overestimating what it can do. And it's very powerful, it can do great things, but you have to be realistic to see where its weaknesses are and how to use it in the optimal way to use its strength and avoid its weaknesses. But for this, it is also very helpful to have an understanding of the basic math that is being used there. Again, not in the way that you need to study to get a degree in math or anything, but I think it's very useful to just know general concepts about it. You can probably see it a little bit like literature. There's a lot of very useful concepts from literature which you can use to understand things in everyday life, but you don't need to study literature, or you don't need to read everything that's out there literature-wise to get this advantage. You can also just see that you try to learn some of those concepts and try to incorporate them into your thinking, always knowing that you will, as I said, you will never have the complete picture, but it will give you new insights and widen your scope. And I invite you to also put mathematics, science in general, and the scientific applications of mathematics, computer science, and all those things in the same category, so that you can actually gain some understanding from it, which then you can use beyond the field of the actual mathematics to help you in your real life, just as insights from literature theory can also help you to or probably not only literature as theory, also literature that you read. If you read good books, they can actually open your horizon to new ways of seeing the world, to new emotions, new ways to deal with emotions, new experiences. And in the way of literature theory, way to find general structures which happen again and again in this kind of literature, which also are probably to a certain degree reflected in your life. And I invite you to do the same with mathematics and physics, to just widen your horizon and hopefully get another tool of understanding and managing your life better than before. So that's all for today. I will try in the future to do a bit more specific videos on some of those concepts which I feel are very useful to understand. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a little bit different environment than usually today, but I hope you still have a nice sound and a good video from me. If you enjoy my videos, feel free to like them, share them with your friends, and of course subscribe to my channel. The more people I feel actually take something from my videos, the more motivated I will be to do more videos and to probably do them also a bit more often. So if you enjoy this, share it and help us share it with more people. So that's all from me today. I hope everyone has a nice week ahead of them. I'm recording this on Sunday, so for everyone watching this on a weekend, I hope you have a great week ahead of you, and well, until next time, goodbye.